Thanks for having me. Today, I'm going to talk about karma. And when I came up with an idea to talk about karma, I just read an article in the past about it, and I had this whole idea about what I was going to talk about. And then when I started researching it, my whole idea changed. So you know how that happens. So what is karma? Is it the idea that what goes around comes around? Is it the idea of cause and effect? If we do something negative, will karma bring it back to us and give us a negative experience? I think that's how it's displayed in popular culture, right? I Googled karma and I got some quotes. One of them was by Susan Colasante. I don't know who that is, but it was a good quote. I want revenge, but I don't want to screw with my karma. Right? And then there was a couple Pinterest quotes. Mouths can lie, eyes cannot, people may forget, but karma will not. Nothing happens by chance, by fate. You create your own fate by your actions, and that's karma. Thought that one was pretty good. But really, like, what is it? So I'm going to do some little background. Karma is derived from the Sanskrit word karman, which means act. And in its earliest use, 4,000 years ago, it didn't have any ethical subtext. It was just a word that they used to mean ritual or an action. And it came from Hinduism. In Hinduism, karma is the tally of all your positive and negative actions, and the sum of those determine how you will incarnate in your next life. There are two ways to think about karma as an action. It's the action that has consequences now, but you can also think of it as a seed. So an action that creates a seed and it will germinate later. But are they, who determines whether they're positive or negative actions, whether it's good or bad karma? Because that's kind of how we think of it today. And in Hinduism, there really wasn't, they had a lot of things written about karma, but they didn't have like, this is good karma, this is bad karma. How they determined whether it was good or bad is completely dependent on who you are and where you belong in society and what spiritual practices you practice, And it's attached to other things. It's attached to your Dharma, which is your duty, and your Atman, that's your soul. So the karma, your Dharma, and your Atman all come together and determine the karma that you're going to take from one life into another. They determine where you will incarnate next. Your Dharma is the standard by which karma is measured. So for example, in the Bhagavad Gita, Prince Arjuna, who's like the main character in that book, he was told that he was a warrior. That was his profession. And he was told that he had to go out and fight this huge fight because there was a fight between two factions. And so, yes, he's a warrior. And so he goes out and he prepares for the fight and he looks out on the battlefield and he sees his cousin and he sees his baker and he sees his dentist. And he's like, I don't want to fight these people. Like, I know them. And who came down? Krishna, one of the gods, came down to talk to him because he kind of backed off and was like, I can't do this. And Krishna came down and said, but it's your Dharma. You have to. There's a whole giant story about it. But the idea of Dharma, and it's his duty. It's his duty to do something that he doesn't want to do. It's his duty to do something, have a battle, which we would think would be negative, but really he's creating positive karma. So there's that kind of, it really depends on what your Dharma is. You can't just, it depends on who you are and where you are to determine what's positive and negative karma in Hinduism. Now, along comes Buddhism several thousand years later, and they also use the idea of karma, but they use it in a slightly different way. They believe, we'll get to that next because I forgot. There are 3 different types of karma in Hinduism. There's sanchita karma, which means actions that have accumulated. All the karma, all the actions that you have done in your positive and negative, and all the karma that's attached to your soul that has come from the previous lives. This is all a record of all the actions that you've taken now and in previous lives, and it can act upon your life now, but it might not be acting at the moment. That's sanchita karma. Then there's kriyama karma, and this means the process of being done. This is karma that you're creating right now in this lifetime that could shape your future lifetime, or it could shape your lifetime now. And you can change this karma. So you could know that you've done something that might not be perfectly good karma, and you can do some more spiritual acts or try to be better and change the karma that you're creating right now. And the last kind is parabada karma. And that's karma that's already acting on your life. So something that maybe in a past life or in today's life, it's already acting on you right now, and you can't change that at all. So that's a whole bunch of ideas about karma. Then along comes Buddhism, and it was developed about 2,500 years ago. And they have the same beliefs as Hinduism, some of them, in karma and dharma and the cycle of rebirth. But in Buddhism, dharma is not your duty. It's the teachings of the Buddha. And they believe that karma is driven by intention. So say, for example, I don't know, I back up my car and I hit a bird. That is not intentional. So that wouldn't be bad karma on me in Buddhism. And the intentions in Buddhism are the determining factor, which leads to where you will be in your cycle of rebirth. So that is like your background of karma. And I feel like, it kind of makes sense where we think of karma today in the Western society. You get some of what we have from the cause and effect, but does that affect our lives today? But there is even more to know about karma. There's 12 laws of karma. And when I looked them up, I had no idea that there was 12 laws of karma. I really just thought it was the stuff that I just told you about, like in Buddhism and Hinduism, and the idea of cause and effect and how it affects your past lives and your future life and your life now. And the 12 laws are very interesting because they remind me of other laws that we might think of, like the law of attraction and things like that. It's very spiritual. And so I found these on beinghappybuddha.com if you want to go there, but it's not like they're on many other sites, but if you wanted to look them up, that's where you could find them. And I was trying to figure out whether it was created by just Buddhists or Hindus, sorry. And I couldn't get that information off the interwebs. So we'll go into the 12 laws. The first law is the great law of cause and effect. As you sow, so you shall reap. I mean, that's the one that we all think of when we think of karma. What you do comes back to affect you. And for example, there is like, if you want to receive happiness and peace and love, is how they say, you must be happy and full of peace and love, right? Whatever you put out to the universe, you'll get back. We've all heard that one before. The second law is the law of creation. And I'm sure you've heard this one. These are all going to be super familiar. The law of creation means that life requires your participation in it. It doesn't just happen to you. You need to do stuff. So you are one with the universe inside and out, and whatever surrounds you gives you clues to your inner state. So if you want to have happiness in your life, you surround yourself with happy people. If you want to have a new job, you don't just sit at home and do nothing and wish you had a new job. You have to go out and create the opportunities to have a new job. I think of this as, okay, so in 9th grade, I had a whole bunch of friends. I had a group of friends, and inside the group of friends, you had your best friend or whatever, and they were changeable. And in 9th grade, I started noticing nobody's calling me. Like so-and-so and, Amy and Tanya went out and did this and they didn't call me. And I was like, huh. And so at first I sat at home and was like, And then I'm like, well, this is stupid. This is no fun. And so I started just calling them. And I feel like that is the law of creation. Instead of sitting at home and dwelling on, I'm not doing anything fun, I can see that they're doing fun, I just was like, hey, what are you doing? Let's go do this. And you created it. The third one is the law of humility. One must accept something in order to change it. If all one sees is the enemy or negative character trait, then they are not and cannot be focused on higher existence. So this is the idea of that. It's easy to go around and put blame outside, put blame on, someone else. I didn't get that job because that guy's a jerk. didn't get my meal because, or I didn't like, my meal was terrible because the chef is horrible or whatever. It's easy to blame others, but instead, maybe you need to look inside. I didn't get that job. Maybe I didn't present myself as well as I could. I think of this one in my life. So my mom was always on a diet. Her favorite food was carrots. Or I'm not really sure it's her favorite food. It was what she ate all the time because, carrots, they have no calories, And so, and, I had some eating issues when I was younger. Shock of shockers. And so I could go around blaming my mom, like, if she had brought me up better, I wouldn't have eating issues. But instead, I could look inside and be like, well, maybe I can change this. Maybe I can start thinking in a different way. And that, and not just focus blame on outside. And so now we get into the law of growth. Wherever you go, there you are. It is we who must change. So this one fits perfectly with the law of humility. So you cannot change people, only you can change yourself. So if you want to grow spiritually, or if you want to grow in any way, or if you want something, you cannot change people. You have to look inside. That is the only thing you have control over. We just watched a show on TV called Queer Eye, and it's where 5 guys go to help a family or help a person. And the one we just watched was a couple in Japan, and the man wrote, he said, we have a loveless marriage. We've been married for 7 years. We barely talk, and they went over and were like, well, why? And he's like, well, I'm afraid. And he's like, I'm afraid she doesn't love me. And they're like, well, have you talked to her? And they're like, he's like, no, I'm afraid. And, and he made up all this stuff in his head about how he thought she was. And he was trying to project stuff. And really what he had to do was change himself. So they actually had him sit down and say, I'm afraid that you don't love me. And she's like, but I love you. And they were like, oh, and I mean, it was all that, it took 2 seconds, but he just had to get up the courage to like realize that it's not, what I project out to the world can be just from my internal fears, maybe. And then number 5 is the law of responsibility. If there's this, they all build on each other. I feel like this one is, if there's something wrong in one's life, then there is something wrong inside. We are a mirror to what surrounds us. So a same example, something wrong in your life, your marriage is not going well. It could be something internal, which it completely was, because they were so disconnected. They were both fearful of what the other one thought without talking to the other person. So they lived a life of like, I'm afraid to talk to my partner and I'm just going to keep going in my little box, rather than being like, hey, how do you feel? Let's talk about it. And once they did that, they were able to really open up and change, their whole life changed. And then 6 is the law of connection. Seemingly the smallest and least important things must be done because everything in the universe is connected. Each step leads to the next step and so forth. You must do the initial work to get the job done. Neither the first or the last step are of greater significance. So this one is like you are who you are because of what happened in the past. And if you change the past, you wouldn't be where you are today. And that tiny little step you took in the past has significance because it led you down this path rather than going that path, and so everything that you're doing creates some sort of karma, some sort of significance, even if it seems like the tiniest thing. And for me, I think about, all those, you can't go back and change what happened in the past. And sometimes we think we were just chatting about how maybe it would be nice to go back and relive college, right? Everybody had fun in college, right? But then at the same time, like what would happen if you changed one thing? You maybe wouldn't be where you are today. And then it's always nice to be grateful for where you are today. Number 7 is the law of focus. One cannot think of 2 things at the same time. You cannot, if your focus is on spiritual values, then it's not possible for you to have greed or anger. And this one I think of, one of the things that I've read a lot about is being worried or having anxiety, because my kids sometimes tell me, they call me up and they tell me they're super anxious. And, one of the things they tell you when you're really anxious is to focus on gratitude, because it's hard to be anxious and grateful at the same time. The thing is that you really have to find that thing that you're really grateful for. Because you can think about being grateful, but not actually feel the gratitude. So you have to feel but what if you sometime try it, and sometime if you're anxious or nervous or angry and you want to change that state, find something that you're grateful for, and it really changes that you can't be both at the same time. Number 8 is the law of giving and hospitality. And just in the name, you kind of can figure out what it means. If one believes something to be true, then they must, in some time in their lifetime, they'll be called upon to demonstrate that truth. It's really more about, if you claim to be something, then you need to also practice it. So for example, hospitality, if you are welcoming to your guests when they travel and you treat them really well, then when you travel, you will be welcomed when you travel. If you want to live in a world that is non-judgmental and where you can go out and be who you are and do what you want, then you have to also practice not being judged. So this is a great one that I've been trying to teach my daughter because she will go, well, I want to wear this, but I feel weird. Does it look weird? Do you think it looks weird? Are they going to judge me? And I'm like, are my friends going to say something? And I'm like, well, do you ever judge your friends? And I'm expecting her to say, no, they're my best friends. She's like, sometimes. And I'm like, oh, okay. So that's when it but really what I expect her to say is, no, I love my friends. They can wear whatever they want. And then I would say, oh, see, you can wear whatever you want. But it's so if she wants to go out and not be judged, then she needs to learn kind of not to judge other people by what they're wearing or what they're doing. Number 9, the law of here and now. One cannot be here and now if you're looking backwards or forwards at what happened in the past, or letting your old patterns of behavior, old thoughts, or worrying about the future. This is so obvious to me, but it isn't. Some of us do spend a lot of time ruminating on, well, if I had done that differently, maybe this wouldn't have happened. Or we also do that thing about the future. Well, what about if I'm driving them down here and I'm worried about whatever it is. If we spend time worrying about the future, or if we spend time ruminating in the past and trying to think about how it could have been better or changed, then you're not really focusing on today and the now. And that thing is that today and right now is really all we have, right? This is the only moment that we can change. And so spending all your time focused on past or future is really just kind of wasting it. And not the last clause, because it's 12. So this is 10. History repeats itself until we learn the lessons that we need to change our path. This one so much reminds me of that story that Aiden read about the hole, which I'm going to read to you again. So a long time ago, we were watching a PBS special, and it was Wayne Dyer, and he read this poem by Portia Nelson. And I'm just going to read it to you again. I walk down the street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I fall in. I'm lost. I am hopeless. It isn't my fault. It takes forever to find a way out. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I pretend I don't see it. I fall in. I can't believe I'm here. In the same place. It isn't my fault, but it takes me a long time to get out. I walk down the same street. There's a hole in the sidewalk. I see it's there. I still fall in. It's a habit. My eyes are open. I know where I am. It's my fault. And I get out immediately. So this is that idea of things repeat and repeat and repeat until you learn that lesson. So they learned their lesson. I know the hole is there. I fell into it. I know why I fell into it. I get out immediately. The end of the story is I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I walk around it. Yay. That's when you have learned your lesson and you can, change what you're doing. Number 11 is the law of patience and rewards. All rewards require an initial toil. Rewards of lasting value require patient and persistent toil. True joy comes from doing what one is supposed to be doing and knowing the reward will come in time. To me, this one is all about marathon training. I trained for a marathon. It was super hard. I had my little list and it was like run 13 miles. And you're like, oh, 13, and then it's like run, however, run 26 miles. And it was hard. Let me tell you, sometimes I would come home and be like, why am I doing this? But at the same time, I knew I had a goal, right? I knew I wanted to run a marathon. I knew it was something that I really wanted to do. So it requires toil. It's not always fun, but when you look back, you're like, yeah, I did that. I worked really hard, but it was really worth it, right? You get that joy from knowing that you put in the work and you got the results. And number 12 is the law of significance and inspiration. One gets back from something, whatever they put into it. So again, there's your marathon training. I put hard work into it. I got something out of it. The true value of something is the direct result of the energy and intent that is put into it. Every personal contribution is also a contribution to the whole. Lesser contributions have no impact on the whole, nor do they diminish it. Loving contributions bring life and inspire the whole. So you have been born with a specific gift, a mission, a purpose that only you can bring to the world. That is this lesson. You can by authentically sharing your knowledge, your skills, that's how you bring good to the whole. And that is your mission. And that is the law of significance and inspiration. So what have we learned about karma? It's not good. It's not bad. Instead, think of karma as the interactions or situations that help us navigate towards our higher purpose. That was by Jennifer Rhodes. It's not about being perfect. It's not about always being good. It's about becoming and being your authentic self. And it's a philosophy of how you can live your life and be your best version. And so I hope I brought you a little bit of inspiration and a little bit of ideas about, the law. I really feel like these 12 laws of karma are great laws to maybe think about bringing some into your life, or probably we already have quite a few already in our lives. But anyway, thanks for having me.